thanks for doing the podcast today, taking the time out. Why don't you give everyone a bit of an intro on yourself and where you started, how you got to where you are today.
Hey man, it's good to be here and good to see you after a bit. It's crazy to think that we started together a while ago. We were like first two juniors at Ubisoft Toronto at the time, like back in 2011. Yeah. Man, 14 years now. That's crazy.
It's insane.
But yeah, like Billy said, I'm Jobye. I'm currently a principal environment artist at Wildlight Entertainment. Really got started back in Canada. Like now I'm in the US. Got started in games proper, like alongside Billy at Ubisoft Toronto. We were like the first two juniors at the studio. Kind of made my way up through there, and then like I always had the goal that I wanted to kind of work elsewhere than Canada, given that the industry was pretty global. Like for a while I was looking at Europe, and then the US, of course, and then ended up being the US. So I was in Seattle, went Monolith for a bit, and then did a stint in LA for Respawn for 5 years, and then moved back up to Seattle for System Era, and then now Wildlight. So yeah, it's been a journey there, going from studio to studio and place to place. A lot of big moves, but yeah, it's been great that we're in an industry that we can do that and work remote now too, which is good. Just changing a bit, but yeah, we'll dive into that.
Yeah. I definitely. I mean, we're in a pretty crazy industry, and you've worked on like some pretty amazing studios. You've sort of got a chance to move around, and pretty much every studio you've gone to, you shipped a pretty big title. You've had a number of successes. Now you're at Wildlight. What is Wildlight for those that don't know?
Yeah, so the studio was formed with a lot of kind of ex-Respawn people. So a lot of like the OG people that worked on Titanfall 1, Titanfall 2, and then also Apex, and even dating even further back where a lot of these people worked together at Infinity Ward back in the day, on the original Call of Duties and Call of Duty 4, which blew up everything for them. And definitely a powerhouse team, design wise. And yeah, personally, like I had like honestly the best time in my career working with them on Apex back at Respawn, like my last bit there. So yeah, I'm just excited to be working with them again, and working on our first game.
Second best experience next to working with me on Blacklist, right? Like we used to
sit. Of course.
Yeah, actually, Blacklist was pretty amazing production, you got to admit. Like,
no, it was
for our first like big title. I mean, like I still have fond memories, and like I'll even hear other people that we worked with, like other big industry names that like anytime they talk about the time working on Blacklist, it was like a pretty special time. Like, wouldn't you say?
It was like it's definitely like it's up there in the projects that like hold a special place in my heart. Like I felt like really came into my own as a developer, like not only as an artist but as like a game developer. And then I mean, that crazy thinking back, like how much they trusted us with as kind of just like lowly juniors back then, where we owned like entire parts of level, doing modeling, texturing, even though we were just kind of modelers at the time.
Yeah.
Learned a lot, and I feel like I still carry a lot of that, of like how we did stuff on that project, and just how generalist we were. Like I feel like I'm still like that today, where I kind of prefer being more of a generalist environment artist versus like just being super specialized. And I've gone through the specialization stuff too before, but like can always come back to just like the big picture generalist stuff, which is nice. And like at Wildlight, we get to do that. At Respawn, we got to do that a bit more, given that it was like smaller studios at the time. But
and like also like I feel like from our first sort of experience on Blacklist and our time at Ubisoft, we like you also have probably like you and I have been lifelong friends or friends since the start of our career. You also have like our senior producer who became our studio director, Alex Perrozo. You still kind of go visit him, and you guys have sort of coffees and dinners together. Like there's like lifelong friendships we made.
And I still talk to like 14 years later. yeah, a lot of good people that were there, and some are still there. So it's like, yeah, when I was just in Canada back in November, yeah, saw Alex, visited Toronto too, had some lunch with people that at the studio. So yeah, it was a special place for sure.
Yeah. And so like going back to your time at Wildlight now, was that always sort of like your goal is to like kind of work on a smaller team, something that's a bit more nimble? Because like you worked on like big, massive productions, and you've also worked on like Apex, which was a big production, but it was also like brand new IP. So you sort of ran the whole sort of gambit of different types of games that you can work on. Was it always your goal to like work on something fresh, new with like a smaller team?
I mean, I don't know if it was necessarily like a goal, but I just kind of like gravitated to that like over time. Cause like, yeah, I mean, we worked at UB, that was like massive productions where, I don't know, Blacklist, we were like 300, and Far Cry at peak between all studios, we were like 700 or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, those co-productions can get into like 700 thousands really.
Yeah.
And yeah, over time I found that I definitely enjoyed more of the smaller teams. Like when we were in Monolith, I think we were 150, 160, which was like relatively small.
It's crazy that one's small, right? Like,
yeah, now, right? And then what drew me to Respawn at the time was that like originally when I joined Jedi 1, the goal of the team was to stay at 85 at the time. Just funny looking back at it now. And then that by the end of Jedi 1 production, we were like, I don't know, 150, 160, which was still like in the grand scheme of AAA, it's like pretty small. And then yeah, you guys grew even more for Jedi 2. But yeah, when I got on Apex, so like interestingly enough, like all the projects I've been on, it's like not, I wouldn't say necessarily like new IPs, but existing IPs, which is like, I guess a thing I've known over my career and got to working on. Like yeah, Apex was a new IP at the time, but when I joined, it was already pretty established in that way. But in that, and at Wildlight, what's interesting is that yeah, it's new IP and everything, and yeah, I mean it's really a big challenge, but it's also kind of really cool to kind of see how the sausage is made that way, especially with this team. And yeah, it really just feels like kind of game dev on hard mode, really, when it's like new IP, new world, new everything, and it's like there's only so much you can kind of lean on for like past stuff and like other games to be like how we're building stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's hard.
it's crazy. It's like it's something that for anyone like not working in games or for folks that are just breaking in, there's like so many things that come into the sort of whole production process that can either throw a game off or like affect timelines, quality, stuff that like is seemingly easy on the outside but is like
Yeah.
extremely impactful. Folks leaving, people getting sick, just like ideas that just don't pan out that are great on paper.
But you actually try it and test it in game, and you're just like, oh yeah, that didn't work out.
Yeah, it did great. It was like we were all excited for it, and like you and I have both been a part of games, or not even. Like luckily for me, touch wood, I haven't worked on a game that has been canceled. I mean, we've worked on games that have pivoted.
Yeah, my very first project was canceled. Like I was on.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I was on Rainbow Six Patriots. That was my very first project at UB.
Yeah.
So that was the one, I guess, yeah, like that, and then I guess recently, like the last two projects that was on at Respawn got canceled, but like yeah, I was gone already by then, but
yeah, like we both know folks that have worked on games for years that end up not seeing the light of day, but
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's
happening a lot lately, which is unfortunate, but yeah.
And you and I have like also seen games at different studios. Like I'll mention one at like perhaps like our first studio. There was like a certain game that after we were done Far Cry, we were looking forward to working on, and it was like one of the coolest looking titles. Like to this day, the one that got canceled, that ended up like that was like something where like still today I'm like, fuck, that would have been really cool, man.
Yeah,
work on that. So Yeah, it's a tough industry, man. You also do just kind of like to sort of round out a bit of your background. You also do a lot of like coaching, teaching, mentoring.
Entering, yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you do there, and sort of how long have you been doing that?
Yeah. So I got started like pretty much 2020, like right at the beginning of COVID. Pretty much, it was like March 2020. I think I started. Um, and yeah, I mean, part of it like really like coincided with when I got my green card at the time in the U.S. Just because like so with just for background for anyone that ever wants to come to the U.S. for on a visa or whatnot or work visa, like you can't make any income outside of your the job that sponsored you for a visa essentially. So I was like I don't know on an O1 at the time. So yeah, like yeah, just basically illegal for you to be making income outside of that. So once you get a green card, that really opens things up for you where yeah, you're you're basically not tied to any job anymore. You're kind of you can do what you want. So now that that was unlocked, I was like always kind of keeping an eye on mentorships, and like I felt like that would be like a nice thing to kind of do and give back to the community. Like I feel like back when I was learning, I would have loved to have had that that stuff. Because like yeah, back then we were just like scrounging for information on like random wikis and Polycount at the time, and like that's how you kind of like really learn. Um, so yeah, now it's yeah, just yeah, jealous in that way of people now coming up where they just have like so many different ways they can kind of come up and learn from online, from just online or from people directly and whatnot. So no, it's just nice to be doing that and helping build up the next generation of the people in the industry really.
Well, you brought up an interesting topic, and yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there on the mentorship stuff. Of course, like I do a lot of mentorship with SkillTree. You do stuff with SkillTree. You do stuff on your own as well.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something interesting. I feel like would be good to just give a brief overview. Like, what is the process like for someone? Like, let's say someone lives in. Let's just use Canada as an example. Like your background and just sort of how you went through the whole process. Like, what's it like? Like, just like kind of summarize it from the beginning. Like you're applying for a job. Like, what's it like to sort of be born in Canada and now be working in the US? Like, how did that process go?
Yeah, so yeah, so the main thing with that is that like so there's a couple different avenues, right? So for mine, like right, like there's for Canada, for example, there's like the TN visa, which is like probably one of the easier visas to get, because it's based on kind of just a treaty between the US and Canada. And that you kind of do. So that one you need like specific like education and stuff like that, like a bachelor's degree and all that, which I didn't have at the time because I actually quit my bachelor after one semester because I ended up getting that job at UB. Yeah, just not ready to be at the industry at the time without needing that. So that was an option for me. So the route I went was the O1, which is it's a funny name for a visa because it's like alien of extraordinary ability, which feels funny to say. But that one is more based on kind of like seniority and project shipped and kind of doing like public stuff. And because like that's the same visa that like technically like actors and athletes and stuff are on. So at the time, I think like I was lucky, like after a few projects at UB, and that was like kind of 5 years in at the time. Yeah, we just worked on really successful projects like Far Cry. And yeah, I think that helped a lot. And I think at the time too, I was like doing just like random little articles on like Gamma Sutra back then, like the blog posts that you can kind of post, and then sometimes it gets featured and things like that. So that helped a lot. And then you basically have to get like a lot of like references as well too. So anyone that you know that's kind of like relatively high up in the industry and has some good clout, like it's good to kind of get their references. So yeah, that's all the back end that is actually a later step, but like first step is actually find a job in the US, and you need to be senior enough generally. Like I wouldn't necessarily recommend someone that's like more junior being like, all right, I'm just going to try to get a job in the US. Right. Yeah, you have to be senior enough, have shipped like a couple good titles already. And then generally the company they'll assign you a lawyer, and then they'll be kind of working on getting your visa for you, whether that's TN, whether it's the O1 based on your background. So for me, it ended up being the O1, and that was like a whole process. Definitely took a bit, and it was kind of dicey at times, but ended up working out.
And this whole time, are you dealing with this, or are you sort of just hearing about this through the studio that you're gonna go to?
No, you're actively dealing with that. Like, yeah, you're on email with the lawyer, and like kind of they're asking for specific documentation. Like, yeah, we're having to find references. Like, like even down when I was doing like the reference letters, like either I had to draft them myself and have people sign in, make sure that like the wording made sense for them, or sometimes they would draft their own. Sometimes lawyers can kind of give you like a template that they need. So yeah, you're actively working on that. So so that was my first visa that I was on, like for an O1.
You get it, like you get your first visa, the O1. You go to Monolith.
Yep.
Are you like starting from scratch when you go there? Because from what I understand, you're going to go to the US. You have to build credit yourself. You have to you're pretty much starting kind of like starting over in some way.
Yeah, you're like you're a brand new person for all intents and purposes, like rebuilding your credit. You're getting like your social security number. So yeah, you're really starting from scratch. Like, yeah, I mean, even the nitty gritty, like when I got there, like technically they won't advance you credit because you have basically no like salary history in the US. Yes. So like basically you get one of those secure credit cards where you like upfront $3,000 and they're just like, all right, here's a card and then here's your $3,000 limit, and then eventually they graduate you to normal stuff once you've been making payments on time. So yeah, it's a whole process, and yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world, honestly. I feel like it really did most of my growing by kind of moving like that. Like first in Toronto and then now in the US. And then like one thing too is that like sometimes people think that like once you have like an O1 or whatnot, because you're tied to a specific company, right? Because the company sponsored you. But it doesn't necessarily stop you from like, if you feel like you want to be going to another company, like that's still possible. Like for me, I ended up going to Respawn after. And for all intended purposes, like you're applying for a new visa with the new company, but it's almost like a transfer because you already have one. So the process is much faster than when you first got an O1. So then when I went to Respawn, basically got on a new O1. And then EA was actually nice. They under work green cards. So I think like I forget what it was. Like after 3 years, you can kind of apply with some kind of stipulations from them. But like, yeah. And then I got my green card through EA, and then now just recently I actually got full citizenship in the US back in December. So yeah, it's been like a 8-year journey now. Before
now, technically you're American. You're dual citizen now.
Yeah, dual citizen, so Canadian and American. Yeah, so got both. So yeah, it's just nice to have the option and just be able to switch between both if wanted. But yeah, at this point though, I am definitely tired of moving, and I'm probably good where I am now. But yeah,
it's quite a process. Like I think it's something that a lot of people sort of don't like kind of realize just how involved it is and like how much of a toll it could potentially take on you, but also like, the benefits, like you mentioned. Like I know like you and I like I talked about this for a long time, and when I was at UB, I had flirted with going to different companies and like moving and stuff like that. Yeah. Finally, you convinced me to come to Respawn. A
few tries. That first try we tried to get you and it didn't work.
First try where it was like I had the offer, but I ended up declining.
Because that is a thing too. Like I think like people run into that too, where like, yeah, if you know what you're saying, like I think I remember that first time you didn't come was like it would have been just tricky for your partner, because like if you come to the US on a visa, your partner doesn't get a visa, and then that just becomes like a whole thing too, where like, yeah, I've known many people that like say their partners come along with them, but then they can't work, and that's really hard on them, and they either end up going back or just it just kind of doesn't work that way in the long term.
It's like if you're not married initially, and you come there with like your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your partner, they can only stay for X amount of months before they have to go back and then come back, right? Like they have to cross back, or is that not a thing?
Yeah, if you're not married, yeah. But yeah, if you're married, they're fine to stay, but they just don't have that same work visa. I think that's actually different in Canada. I think like like people that come on visas, their partners actually kind of get those as well. I think I know
Yeah.
a lot of people at UB that had that we worked with. But yeah, in the US, not that. So no, I've definitely known people that have like kind of got married, came to the US, but their partners couldn't work, and then that just was tough on them as a situation, and they ended up moving back to Canada or whatnot. So I get it why you said that first time, and second time it worked out because of remote and stuff. So
yeah, but good. The funny thing about the second time is that we actually considered moving because when I had signed, COVID,
there was a stipulation that you would move eventually.
Yeah. So it was that like after a year when like COVID dies down, because it was 2021 when I joined Respawn, and the idea that after X amount of months we would start the whole process. But then the second wave started with COVID, and COVID ended up lasting 2 years, and then our team specifically, like a lot of teams, like started to become very distributed. Like a lot of people
started moving.
Yeah, a lot of people moved. Now, if you were to like actually look at our team, we're like a very, very like remote heavy team. Like there's not a lot of people live in close proximity to the studio anymore. And just so happened also like, I ended up, having son recently, and like, just like,
that flexibility is really nice.
Not like, it was not meant for me to move, and like, I'm like totally happy with how things worked out. But it's just crazy because, I think that this is good information for people to know, because like not a lot of people sort of, especially those that are just starting out in the industry or even been in the industry, who have like just considered moving. There's quite a lot of sort of involvement there.
Yeah. But also it's like, I mean, like it's kind of slowly shifting a bit with like remote stuff, but like that's definitely a big thing. I feel like I've kind of like saw over the last few years, like especially where like knew a lot of people that we worked with at UB or whatnot, or at other companies in Canada that just ended up working for US companies, but remote from Canada, which is great. Overall that stuff is kind of finding more of a middle ground now between remote and kind of like on-site and hybrid and stuff like that. But like, that's, people have that option now too. Like if you're able to kind of find kind of like remote friendly companies, that's an option as well too, without having to get the full on visa and move to the US.
We got you back. We lost Jobye for a minute. So you mentioned something interesting. I think it's a good topic as well, that I've got jotted down here, is like the whole like remote work from home sort of kind of state of things right now. So just like briefly, maybe you could kick us off on this topic. Like what do you think of like what are we in right now as far as like remote work culture? Is it the end of the remote sort of wave? Is it the start? Are we gonna what's your thoughts on just sort of work from home?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily that it's gonna like end fully. I think there's definitely like almost kind of like a correction of what it was before, because definitely like during COVID it was like just heavy remote, everybody. And then some people were even committing, it's like, oh, we're just gonna be remote, and then they're kind of walking that back sometimes, like especially the big tech companies now, like just Amazon recently, or just going back to full days a week in the office here in Seattle and everywhere, really, all their offices. So like, I don't know, I definitely see like tech companies being a little bit of a harbinger, a little bit of like what's to come, and like a lot of other companies follow their lead technically. Like I feel like, I mean, I remember back in COVID, like they were actually like the first ones to do like full remote, and then everyone kind of followed in line after that. So I can kind of see that happening. But I feel like it'll definitely be a mix now. It's like there's going to be remote, there's going to be like full on-site people, there's going to be like hybrid. I think like, just gotta definitely doubly double check with the companies you're going to go to, like how committed they are to that, right? So like for us, for example, at Wildlight, we're just like a fully remote company. We do have like a lot of people in LA. We have a small office there and a very tiny office here in Seattle. But we're definitely remote first, and that's not going to change as far as I know. But that's not every company though. So like, I mean, even my last company here in Seattle, we were like more of like a hybrid place, but they also had some distributed people. So it'll just be interesting to see how that shakes out. Like as far as like whether big companies will gradually start phasing that out, or if it'll just be kind of smaller, more independent companies that do it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing sort of a wave, especially in the larger companies. I'm seeing kind of a push or like a trend to go back towards in the office, at least trying to bring people back part time. Like I know I like UB, people are going back
Yeah,
for
like 3 days a week, I think.
yeah, mandatory 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And like I might be the same at other large studios like our team at Respawn. Like we're pretty distributed, and we have like a good sort of way that we work right now, and like we don't want to change that. Like we have some folks that like have people on my team that live in the UK, people on my team that live in Poland. One person on my team lives in Australia. People throughout Canada, throughout the US, and different time zones and stuff like that. And we've sort of, over the course of like Jedi Survivor production, and like now it's like we've found a way that we work well together. Like I feel like if right now we were to shake things up and say we're coming back to the studio, well, you're gonna like lose a bunch of people.
Yeah, lose a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people, and it's gonna slow down production. It's not feasible right now. However, I do see on my end, anyways, like just sort of as I'm getting a lay of the land in the next 5-10 years. I do see that like large companies, as they're hiring people, like they're looking more now for like people that are local to the studio. Like there's less and less
hybrid. Yeah.
There's less and less remote postings, whereas smaller studios are like teams that, were part of the big machine before, who are now like building teams. They're like super open to like remote. Like, why do you think that is? Like, is it just like a talent thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a talent thing. Like you can just cast a wider net than just like a city, right? So it's like, I think that helps a ton, really. And just like people that are from previously not like a big game dev hub, like are able to kind of go there and be in a more affordable place and still do the job that they love too. So it's like, yeah, just cast a way wider net, like across the US, across Canada, like Europe even, and other continents. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's really nice to have that flexibility. It definitely comes with its challenges sometimes too, but like, yeah, overall, like I really enjoyed. Like I'm kind of like full-time remote here up in Seattle, and yeah, some days, I do miss kind of going to the office and kind of shooting the shit with people.
Yeah, me too.
But like, yeah, I think like there's things like companies can do too to like kind of really help still foster those social bonds between people. Like I think at least at Wildlight, we think we do a good job of that, where like our company culture is very Discord focused. We just have like a company Discord where people are working, and we have like different rooms that people can kind of just like jump in and co-work and talk and things like that. It's almost kind of replicating an office, but like in a Discord setting. So you kind of see where people's at. You can just drop in and drop out of stuff. Yeah, it was almost kind of like an evolution of like a little thing that we used to do at Respawn. Just as like the our environment, our team, like one thing that kind of got us through COVID and it kept us sane was that like we basically had this like open like Zoom call that for our environment team on Apex, and we'd basically just be like working and talking and just kind of shooting the shit like all day really, like, and yeah, so that was really nice. And yeah, I think like word of that a little bit got around on the team, and then like when they went off and formed Wildlight, they kind of almost took that kernel and kind of expanded it to like the whole company, which was really cool to see when I came here. So yeah, it's nice. But it's definitely, yeah, even that is almost like a muscle in a way. Like, but like after I left the Apex team, like I was on teams that didn't necessarily do that stuff, and I was kind of out of that groove and mindset for a bit, and then now I'm just kind of trying to get back into it now, just because sometimes it can be hard when you're like working and talking at the same time and kind of still staying focused. But yeah, it's yeah, I mean, something we did a lot of, I remember at UB back in the day too, just as we're just like chatting and working and just doing our thing,
We'd have see, that's the thing. Like I do, like I'm so thankful that I had that,
that on-site.
Yeah. It's like, I had like a decade of on-site experience, like literally left UB after 10 years, like right after my 10-year anniversary, pretty much.
Yeah.
And like, like the the early years of my career, I feel like, were super important to like be with people and see how sort of the development process, is, and like, see what people are working on and be inspired and learn from people, and the social aspect, like you and I and other folks, like, hey, it's coffee time, let's go for a coffee. And we would go and we would decompress together. We would lunch together. Um, you know, that's the one thing, like right now, like, I kind of worry about for like new folks joining the industry is like
Yeah.
not getting that experience. Like, what
Yeah.
do you think that that's gonna, like, what do you think that effect is going to be? Like, what do you think that sort of, what's going to be the result of that in 5-10 years?
Yeah, honestly, that is like one of, I'd say like the downsides a little bit of remote. Like I feel like juniors are kind of like suffering a bit more than others in that respect. Like, because it's just not as easy as it is in the office just to like hop by someone's desk, like show them something quick on the screen and be like, all right, you good? And then after, like, if you have any questions, they can just pop by, ask you, and you don't have to be there, right? Because like with remote, it's like, I don't know, at least in my experience, like when we've had like interns or juniors or whatnot, it's like just a bit harder in terms of like you basically need to be like in a call with them like practically all day, just like them screen sharing, and then you're like kind of pointing at stuff and like, oh, just do this thing and this thing. And it's like Confluence and stuff can help, but like I feel like that can only like get you to a certain point sometimes. So yeah, unfortunately, I feel like that experience is kind of suffering a bit. Like,
Definitely.
so yeah, and I think like we're kind of seeing like some results of that too now too, where like I feel like you see a lot of the job postings that people are posting generally are more senior because like they just don't have time to kind of train up juniors right now or kind of handhold right now. So it's like that's a bit unfortunate, but like I think like overall, like I think over time as like stuff is kind of switching back more to hybrid and some return to office stuff, I think that'll swing back in their favor, which is good. But yeah, I think that's definitely, I don't know, I still don't have the answer to that. Like I think about that sometimes of like how we can kind of make that better for juniors over time, because that's definitely something that suffered over remote and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel for them. It's a tough time right now with that. And then on top of like all the industry wide layoffs and stuff that we're going through right now, it's hard.
Yeah, and you and I have been like a part of like various different crunches as well, like to varying degrees, and like some were pretty intense crunches. Like, you and I have both been at the studio until midnight. You and I have both, gone to the studio on a Saturday or a Sunday to work, on various different projects. And one thing as well, like with like crunch is, it could take a real toll crunching remotely. Like I can even just give my experience here because I had a pretty rough experience recently with crunch. And like, just like to preface this, like this has nothing to do with, the team or the studio that I was working on. It was just a sort of a swirl of things that all happened at the same time. Like I was, we had just moved recently. Like I was part of Respawn and I was working on Star Wars. We had just moved, and I'm working on Jedi Survivor, and we're in a new house. We moved. We have like our dog. We have our, we're our family. We're getting all settled, and we're going into the heavy sort of ending of our production. Like we're in the last like 10 months of production. Let's say 8 months of production, and 2 weeks after we move, our dog passes away. And so like, if anyone has ever lost an animal, like, what that could do to you, especially like my dog was like 14 years old. He was like, everybody knew my dog if you knew me, right? Like it was like a big part of,
he was a good boy.
Life. Yeah. And so he passes away, and I'm in crunch at the time because we got to get our level done. We have like various different sort of trailers that we're getting ready, and my level was going to be showcased partially in a trailer, so I had to get that ready. And at the same time, like I also do mentoring, coaching, teaching. So I'm trying to keep up with that. So there were days where like I would work until like 2 a.m, while dealing with like the loss of a pet. And then Shortly after that, like my brother's dog, who was also like my dog, and my dog was kind of my brother's dog. Like we would share our two little that we had. My brother's dog was a bit younger. It was like 4 or 5 years younger. He also got sick. And for those that, like I said, don't know me, I'll probably post a picture here somewhere. Like I actually put both of my dogs, like Polo and Mimo, on a calendar in Splinter Blacklist. I don't know if you remember that, but like,
I think I remember that. Yeah.
I like one of the assets on the wall was like a little office space, and I put their picture on a calendar, so they're forever immortalized in video game lore, especially Splinter Cell lore. But anyway, so 2-3 months later, my brother's dog ends up getting sick, like immediately after Polo passes away. Then Mimo passes away. She was fully healthy before that, so he was like the sort of very lively dog. Like he would bark at like the sound of a squirrel, jumping on a branch outside. He ends up passing away, and we're in the peak of production. We have like 6 months left. Polo passes away, Mimo passes away. I'm working till 2 a.m, pretty much like 5-6 days a week. Winter in Canada, and if anyone has ever been to Montreal or Toronto,
Brutal.
It's not fun, right? Like
I don't miss it.
You used to love it, now you don't miss it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and that was hard. And anyway, what I'm getting at is the reason why it was especially hard is that people can't see how much you're suffering.
Right. Yeah.
Remote. Like, it's not like if we were at the office, like I would see, like,
you talk about it and then be like,
this person's going through and try to help them. Like, there's like, maybe I should have been more vocal and be like, hey man, I can't do this right now. Like I'm going through a lot, but I don't want to let my team down, and we're remote and we're like, everyone's pushing so hard. We're trying to finish this game. But
there's pressure on yourself as like an artist too. You want to do good work, and
exactly, the pride. So like, I wonder how much of that is also like, first of all, like all of us are going through that, like seniors in various degrees. Like there's things that, you went through the past couple of years, right? Like, I don't know if you want to talk about any of that, but I know you went through your fair share of like ups and downs, and like now you're doing amazing. And like, if there's juniors that are like, struggling with like not learning, I wonder how much of that they are worried about vocalizing because, for fear of like, just sort of being looked at or whatever, like as like being weak or whatever, where like totally like, you're not, but like, how do we fix that? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but I just know that that is also another downside to like this, like as much as like remote is so good in ways, there are so many like really, really big drawbacks that I don't know how we get over.
Yeah. And that's, I think some of that like kind of comes down to like kind of how you hinted at too, just kind of communication. Like I feel like with remote, you almost kind of have to over communicate a little bit, like, because like if you keep it to yourself and just kind of not tell anyone or not saying how you're feeling, like it's kind of like you're just gonna be suffering in silence. And it's I think it's important to just kind of be letting other people know, letting your lead know. So it's like that's the one thing I can kind of say for juniors. Just try to you need to be kind of on top of communication a lot more. And like, I mean, even for seniors, really, just because like, at the end of the day, we're not in an office together. We're not in someone's house. So we can't really know what people are going through and what they're doing. So it's like, there's a degree of trust there, but you need to, it's a kind of two-way street in that sense for communication. And then, I mean, even for crunch, right, too, like, it's like a lead or a director can't like really address an issue of crunch with someone if like they don't know, like, I don't know, there's some people that might not necessarily like check in late and they just like hold on to check in until the morning, and like you wouldn't even ever be able to tell, right? But I think like there's obvious signs of like, oh, someone checking in at 2 a.m. then people can put 2 and 2 together. But like I could see how some people just are doing work and just checking at regular times, and then you don't necessarily know. So I think it's just important to over communicate on that end, just to help that. Just because like, I mean, crunch is like a thing where like, it's not a one size fits all solution. It's like something you kind of constantly need to be looking at. And like, if you're serious about the health of the team in long term, it's like, you you want to keep an eye on that. Like, yeah, particularly like I think on Jedi 1, honestly, I was like very, very close to burning out like on that project.
I used to, you and I, like, you used to call me a lot to like sort of.
Yeah. Oh, that was a tough project. Like, it was definitely like some of the work I'm proudest of and some of my best work I've done in my career, like kind of like just quality wise visually and what we're doing with like on design side too. But like, yeah, it took its toll on me. It was like, that was a hard project that last year. We're crunching a lot. It was like, yeah, first game for that team really. So there was just a lot of pressure, a lot of like, the schedule was tight, the scope was big. And it was like, yeah, if like, I don't know, personally as an artist, I just had trouble just being like, oh, just kind of throw something in and it'd be done. It's like, you want it to be good. And at the time too, I was like on the first level too. So it's like first impression of the game. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of pressure. Like, I think like what really helped me get through it, that's when I started, therapy at the time. And I've actually just been in therapy in and out like ever since.
Is that therapy like sort of like, are you in therapy because of game dev, or are you in therapy just because like you think it's just like good to do anyways? Like how much of that is sort of as a result of all the sort of pressure you were under?
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was like, yeah, it was just really as a reaction to kind of like feeling burnt out, really. And like, I think at the time I remember I saw a random post on Twitter. They were just like, oh yeah, seven signs of burnout. And I was like going through all the things. I was like, oh, I have like 6 out of 7 of these. And then, yeah, so at first it was as a reaction to that for sure. And then like a therapist at the time really helped kind of get through that. And that helped a lot. So at the time, like I did that, went through it, then I was good, and then wasn't seeing her for a bit. And then, yeah, but like on and off, like as stuff has come up, I was doing it. I think only now, my therapist now here in Seattle, like, cause like, yeah, when I moved up to Seattle, TMI, but I'd gone through a breakup at the time. So I was like, was seeing a therapist to kind of work through that. But once that was kind of mostly kind of said and done, like I'm still seeing that therapist like every month or two. And at this point, it's more like, it's more preventative in that way, where it's kind of just like, just so I don't get in a super stressful spot like I've been in the past. But no, but honestly, yeah, I think as a tool and thing, I think it's just good practice and good to have, really. I think like one thing I really got from kind of our old boss and friend Alex, we were having dinner once in LA, and we were talking about therapy and stuff, and like what really opened it up for me at the time was like, I don't know, like we talk about like physical health, or it's like, oh, you're not feeling good, and you can kind of like work out, like do all these things, you'll feel better. And that's just, physical health is just very, like, everyone talks about it, it's very good, and you can see the tangible benefits, right? But like your brain in a way kind of needs the same thing, really. Like mental health is just as important, if not more sometimes, than physical health. And it's just like, yeah, something you still need to kind of keep working and getting better at it, how to process stuff and dealing with stuff. So yeah, definitely encourage it for anyone, really.
Do you like, I know, like I remember when you were going through that on Jedi Fallen Order, because I was kind of going through something similar at the time on Far Cry 6, which was like one of probably my hardest projects, like mentally, and sort of just, it really tested my skills. It tested my my patience. It tested a lot of things about me. And I remember like you used to call me at times, and like I'll get pretty like sort of personal here, and if you want, I can just remove any of this stuff. But I remember you used to call me with like, there were certain things that were happening in production, like stuff that you had warned about, and stuff that wasn't sort of acted on, and then the results of what you had sort of foreshadowed would happen, ended up happening, and now you're stuck with like having to clean it up, and you have to work weekends, and you had to work a lot of overtime to sort of fix things, and issues with production and stuff like that. When you think back to your time on Jedi Fallen Order, like, is it hard to sort of reflect on it because of how much you went through mentally, or like have you sort of resolved that now and you can see it kind of clearly, or is it like sort of still a touchy? Because I feel that way about Far Cry. Like when I think back to
Right.
Far Cry 6, it's hard for me to think about that production because I just went through so many ups and downs mentally. Like a lot of things that like I'm really proud of, a lot of things that I'm not proud of. The way I reacted to certain situations and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe one day I'll get into that. But is it hard to think back on your Fallen Order experience?
I don't know if I'd say hard, but it's like, I think back on it a lot. Like it just kind of comes up in general, just through kind of talking with old coworkers that we worked with at the time. Or even just, I mean, even just in therapy now, like I feel like that comes up. Like I need to reference that sometimes of just like how I felt at the time to kind of see how like if something I'm feeling now is like similar or different or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, if anything, it's like
It was a moment for sure, right? Like it's a
no,
moment.
yeah, it's like it's a key part in my career for sure. But like I don't know. I feel like if had I not gone through that too, like I feel like I wouldn't be in as good a spot as I am now, like mentally, as far as like knowing what to look out for and like what to be careful with. Because like now I think like since that experience too, like I've definitely been more of a proponent of just like not crunching as much and like just really trying to separate. I think the big thing is like learning how to separate yourself from your work, right? Just tricky, so especially as artists and whatnot, and you have like a lot of investment in what you're doing, and you want to do good art and have it play good and everything. But I think like that was part of it, a big part of it, really, back then, where like if you feel you're doing bad work, you feel bad, you know. And then even though like even at the time like I wasn't, but like I felt like I was, you know. So like I think it's that's the big thing, really, just kind of separating yourself from your work. And yeah, I mean I still work at it now because like I feel like I dip into that sometimes where I'm still I get back to that mode, but you have to kind of pull yourself out. 'Cause yeah, at the end of the day, it's like yeah, we love our jobs and it's like it's cool that we're working on games day in day out, but like at the end of the day, it's still a job, and you need to have your personal life, you need to have your relation outside of work, and that's really comes first, really, you know.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like it's one of those things that like you kind of got to keep working at. Like it's one of those things that like comes back in waves. Like I'll notice myself at times getting lost in my work as well, as far as like I'm sometimes I'm unable to separate my work from my life. Like my sort of ability to do good at work and do good work and get praised for my work sometimes sort of intertwines too much with my personal reflection on like my self-worth. And like it's like there's times where like they're perfectly separated and I'm like I'm enjoying my time with my family and I'm enjoying my time at work and it's nice and clean, but there are times where you get like
Meeting over,
you get so wound up in something where it's like and this happened like a lot on Far Cry 6. It happened as well on Survivor, but more so for me on Far Cry 6. Like my Far Cry 6 experience was probably your JFO experience where like there were I was like there were like times where I was worried about like what my team thinks about me. There were times where I was worried about like what my industry friends are going to think once we release this product. There were times where I was worried about like what the internet's going to say about what we're making. And like, and also we were wrapped up in all this like other Ubisoft, like noise that was happening in the industry, the drama that was happening that, that sort of really took its toll. And like, it was like a dark time. And it was one of those times where like, you know, I still haven't fully sort of, untangled the like mental sort of, ties that I have to that, because there are times where like there's people that I really respect, that I really like in the industry that I worked with, that I have sort of that we had sort of times when we were working. I'm trying to say this in a way that you know, just trying to be respectful as possible, but we had like not the best sort of moments, and they're like, you know, we argued or we got at each other, and like and those really still affected me. But anyway, I don't know what I was getting at. It's just sort of this is I probably need a therapist. I've never actually gone to see a therapist.
You maybe should start therapist.
I need to, man. Like I really do need. I've talked about this a number of times with like a number of people. With you, ex-colleagues. I really need to start. Just like you said,
the same way you love the gym, Billy, and just do that for your brain. You're good.
So yeah, just switching gears a bit. Like I got a number of topics here. We won't get to them all. I won't take up all your time. Kind of coming to the end here, but just wanted to talk about so there's been a lot of sort of not great news in the industry lately. Like it's kind of you mentioned this briefly, but I kind of want to like get your take on this. Like, what do you think of the industry, especially as like, whether you're a large company with like multi-billions of dollars, whether you're a small startup with like 5 people, whether you're someone who has received a envelope of like, tens of millions of dollars from an investor, like it doesn't feel like there's any sort of security or safety in the industry right now. Like how, like, as someone who has as much experience as you have, right? Like you have a lot of experience, you have a lot of reputation, you have a deep network connection. Like you can probably get another job tomorrow if you really wanted to. Like, how do you feel in this sort of climate?
I mean, it's still scary, honestly, and it's like it's kind of like you hinted at. It's like it just feels like no one is safe. Not to be like all doom and gloom, but it's like kind of going through last year. It's like big companies got layoffs and like studios shut down. Small companies, like fresh companies that just started a year or two ago, they got a lot of investment. So it's like, yeah, it's just weird that like, cause like, I don't know, historically, I feel like I've always thought of like, bigger companies were safer because like, yeah, it was just a bit more stable and they had like a solid pipeline of games, but it's just like, yeah, I feel like just kind of COVID kind of threw a wrench in things as far as like, my take on it is that like, yeah, just people saw those numbers and then they just started kind of like projecting all their numbers based on it. They're just like, oh, like, yeah, just these COVID numbers and all the money that we're making will just keep going. And it's like, it was kind of like a one-off event. Like, I don't know why people would be doing that. And I mean, that happened in games, that happened in tech, that happened in all kinds of industries, really. So we're not unique in that. But like, I feel like it's kind of hurt us particularly where, yeah, they just teams ballooned, budget ballooned. They were high before, but they got even higher. And it's like, it's been tough. Like, yeah, I'm honestly like still on the edge. Like that's something you try to not think about. And I mean, honestly, that's probably something I talk about a lot in therapy these days. It's just like the whole industry climate and the stress from that. But
yeah. And this is also something that's constantly running in the background while you're trying to do good work, like it's,
yeah, no, because like you try not think about it and try to just focus on your work. But then like the week happens and it's like, oh, 2 studios shut down, and you're just like, what the fuck?
yeah.
Goes back to the front of your mind, and you're just like, shit, like, is everything okay? And you're like, so it's hard not to think about. Honestly, it's like, yeah, even if you have like a deep network that like we do, it's like still scary, and it's like even talking to like some people that like have even more years than me, and like that went through like the 2008 crash with the financial crisis, like. They said like the last couple of years, like as far as like the jobs lost is like way worse than even that was. Crazy. So yeah, it'll be interesting because like last year I feel like a lot of people were saying like survive until 2025. So as long as you can hold on till then, you're good. But like I don't know, I'm not confident that's going to be the case anymore. Like it's probably going to be more 2026, but we'll see. I hope I'm proven wrong this year. But yeah. It's scary times for sure.
It's scary as well because like I'm sure every studio, like there's studios that just the past 6 months were like reaching out to me or like to you, and they're like, hey, come join our team, and then like 2 months later they're completely shut down, or like there are times
just a layoff, and then they're reaching out to you like a month later. I was like, did you lay off 10,000 people? Like why are you hiring?
Yeah, or like there's like how many times have we been in or we've heard of people being in like team meetings where they're like, guys, we're totally safe. Nothing's going to happen to this team. And then like a week later, it's like, yeah, sorry, we have to restructure. And it's like, you just, it's crazy. And like, how do you think that this is going to impact, obviously it impacts us a lot. Like, how do you think this is going to impact like juniors and people like that are trying to like start their careers in the industry? Is there going to be less jobs, you think? Is there going to be like, are things going to turn around in the near future? Like what's your honest, sober take on this situation?
No, honestly, I struggle with that question. Like, I kind of get that from mentees the last little while too, and it's like, it's hard to say. Honestly, it's like, I'm hoping that it is like just kind of like a transitory thing, and then like as stuff like kind of gets back to more sane levels, like junior jobs will kind of come back more. Like I feel like when we got into the industry, right, like kind of 2011, like I feel like from keeping an eye on it, like at the time when we were in school, like I felt like junior jobs had kind of dipped quite a bit because of the financial crisis, right? And like that was for like a good couple of years. And then like only really in 2011 where I kind of felt like I saw kind of like that uptick of like more junior jobs coming back. So after a couple of years, right, like 3 years after 2008. So I'm hoping like that's the case. Same here now, where like, yeah, now there's kind of like really just that big focus on kind of getting senior talent, just because of like some of the remote stuff we were talking about earlier. But yeah, because like juniors are kind of still crucial to any company really to just kind of build the next generation of people, and just not just having different mindsets of how to do stuff and getting fresh takes on stuff. Because if when you're all seniors and principals and stuff, all that can be tough too, as far as like just kind of having the one mindset. So yeah, or I mean, or else like because if you think that like, oh, if we didn't come in as juniors, like and then grow into who we are now, right? Like it's a shame to think about. But yeah, I'm for me, it's just like I'd say to juniors, just like hang tight. Like it's gonna be tough. Like I don't know, back then when we were looking for jobs, like I don't know, it took me, after I initially graduated, it took me like 6 months to find my gig at the time.
What were you doing in between then while you were looking?
So I basically did like a 3-year 3D program to graduate, and I felt ready to apply. So I was applying, but then I ended up starting like a bachelor's in game art. So I was doing that in the meanwhile, but once I landed the gig at UB, I ended up quitting that and going. Just I felt like you need your portfolio more than an education in that sense. So like really for juniors, just like just keep working on your portfolio, keep building it up. Quality over quantity in terms of what you're making, right? Like really just hone that, and keep looking at like what the quality bar is for other juniors that have managed to break into the industry, and even just like seniors and stuff, right? Because like your quality bar will just be that much more important to kind of break in. So just hang tight, and it's like it might take a year, it might take a couple even. So it's like just gotta be ready for that, and kind of be doing stuff in the meantime to.
Would this like if you were breaking in 2025, would your approach be any different? Would it discourage you kind of hearing all this news, or would you knowing your personality and knowing who you were back then, like, or would you be relentless in your pursuit?
I mean, you kind of have to be, I feel like too. It's like you just have to just keep at it, and just keep working on stuff. It's you need that more now more than ever, I feel like. Like it's you just have to keep working on stuff and not give up. Like if you really just want to be in industry in that sense, just keep, at the end of the day, it's like really your portfolio, right? Like you just want to build that as much as you can. Be honest with yourself too. Like if you're learning a lot of new stuff, and then like some of your old stuff just not holding up anymore compared to that new stuff you're doing, just cut it and then keep going, and just really, really hone that it's like ready. And I think like a big thing too is this like networking is a big one too. Like as far as like just talking with other devs, like whether it's on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatnot, or if you have any local meetups in areas that you're in, I think that's always still a good one too. Just start building your network, and just laying that groundwork for when stuff is going to start rebounding a bit more. Like I like to tell the story where like when I got my first job at Ubisoft, like the way I found that job really was like on Twitter. It's at the time back in 20. So like, because I remember it was like junior jobs were super dry back then because of the financial crisis, and like they were just looking for seniors. And then I just happened to see that like this one Ubisoft recruiter I was following at the time, Dan Tamem, he posted like, oh yeah, it's Ubisoft Toronto starting up and they're hiring their first juniors, and then just hit him up on Twitter, and then that's kind of what got the ball rolling. So yeah, you never know where you might see those jobs. So it's like, yeah, just be in touch with all that stuff, whether it's Twitter, Blue Sky, LinkedIn.
And it goes to that like relentless thing that I was talking about, because I kind of feel like you have that. I mean, I'd like to think that I had that, and I have that. And a lot of folks that we know that are like sort of really, really kind of go-getters. Like I kind of feel like they have that, where it's like, you just kind of,
proactive.
You just proactive, just trying everything. Like I know, like, another thing that you didn't touch on that you were doing is like, working on like mods and like sort of like, okay, I don't have a job right now. There's a mod team. Hey, you need me to make some assets? Maybe I can use these assets as like portfolio pieces. Now, I'm not saying that you should work for free for anybody, and I'm not advocating for working for free. However, I am saying that like, you just need to try to see like what is out there and what can you do that other people are not doing. Like, how can you do a little bit more? Like when I was
to stand out in
the industry in my first year of college, I took a trip to E3, and I used my like, because at the time E3 RIP E3 at the time you needed journalist credentials to join to like go. It wasn't open to the public. So when I was at college, and I was at the game art program at George Brown College, where I teach now, I was sending a monthly newsletter to all the students, and I started that so I could go to E3, and then use that as like journalist credentials, and I got in. So I went to E3. I met people at E3. The following year, I got the IGDA scholarship to go to GDC, where I met people from Microsoft 343, Sony, Ubisoft. I had a mentor who was Pat Redding at the time, who was the game director at Ubisoft and the newly formed Ubisoft Toronto, which was just opening their doors. Networked there. I was working on games. I had worked on like serious games like medical simulators and stuff. Just anything I could possibly do.
And that's the thing too. Like if you need to be like outside of the industry for a bit, like really my first job before UB, like kind of like a little outside of the industry, was also serious games. I was like working at like the small studio in Montreal doing content for like serious games and military sims and stuff like that. So it's like, whatever you need to do to kind of get you through this period, and but just kind of keeping your eye on the goal for getting into games eventually again. So
I feel like if you've got that sort of like that laser focused attitude and that hunger, and it's like, no, I'm gonna be a game dev. Like this is my, like there's like no other option. It's just a matter of time, like. But there also comes down to like being honest with yourself, being able to accept feedback, being able to like learn from others, and sort of and kind of humble yourself and improve yourself even in areas where sometimes it's uncomfortable.
That's where you grow the most, really, when you get outside of your comfort zone for that stuff. So it's like, just gotta be a sponge when you're a junior. Just kind of just be really easy to work with, and just kind of be really good at asking the right questions, talking to people. Just the worst thing you can do is kind of recoil on yourself and just like not talk to anyone and just be extra shy and whatnot. Like you gotta get yourself out there and just be building those bonds and connections with people.
Yeah. Totally. Well, I got some other topics here, but maybe I can save them for a future discussion with you. I know you've got a busy day ahead, and I just kind of wanted to end with something. So, if you have some advice, I know you've mentioned some, but just to sort of summarize, like if you had some advice for either experienced or aspiring devs, like based on sort of how the industry seems right now, like what would you say? Like, do you feel good about the industry? Do you have any sort of words of encouragement or anything that you kind of want to end with?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went through the doom and gloom stuff a bit earlier, so I definitely feel that way. But also, like, I don't know. Yeah, this industry has kind of ebbed and flowed and has gotten itself out of tricky situations. So it's like, I know we'll figure it out in the end. We always do. And it's like, I think there'll definitely need to be a correction as far as like how we do stuff, like whether like budgets are definitely bigger, teams are too big, and it's like something's got to give in terms of like how we do to like kind of get to like a saner spot, really.
But games are not going anywhere. Like, I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
as an
no,
industry,
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like games is the biggest medium there is, right? It's bigger than movies, bigger than sports, even like everything combined. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So like I don't think it's going anywhere. I just hope, yeah. I think at the end of the day, like as an industry and as like devs, like we're problem solvers. So I feel like this is just like that next big problem that we'll have to figure out as an industry. So we'll get there. But yeah,
just because you mentioned it, and I would regret not bringing it up. So maybe we could end with this because you sort of alluded to it. How do you think that AI is going to impact us with sort of let's just say the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years of like development? Like I feel like there's a large resistance to AI. I don't know if it's fear because we don't want to be replaced. I don't know if it's fear because we feel like some of our work is being stolen by algorithms that are sort of like scraping, various aspects of our work and not giving credit. Like how do you
companies? So it's like, yeah, it's a weird spot they're in with how they're getting all the content.
Yeah. How do you feel like that's going to impact us as like, okay, so we're in a state right now where our industry is sort of contracting, and not so much contracting as much as it is like sort of like burning off.
Not as big as it was during COVID, but still like
kind of burning off some of the excess fat that was like, it's almost like COVID like was like a big junk food period. If you equated to like, a big meal, it was like a lot of junk food at once. So we gained a lot of weight, but it's not real weight. You know what I mean? Like it was inflated. So now we're at a point where we have this AI thing on the horizon. Like, and as we contract, as these insane budgets sort of, as we start trying to resolve these insane budgets that some of these projects have and these timelines and these inflated teams, I'm personally noticing teams trending towards being smaller and more nimble, more lean. But how do you feel like AI is going to impact that in future?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like when I think about AI, I think about like some other tech that's come online over the last decade or so. Like when I look at like, I don't know, mocap, right? Like when mocap came, like I remember animators were just like freaking out, and then there's like going to get replaced and we won't need us anymore. But it's like, I think really the animators are still there. We still work with tons of great animators, and like I think like their job has evolved, sure, but they're still there. And then also like I think like the people that can still animate like outside of like mocap or whatnot, like are still like super valuable, like in terms of like that skill set, because like so you can't mocap every single thing, right? And there's just like so much stuff that, especially in games, like with less realistic based games, like you're having to do a lot of hand tuning stuff, right? So I almost kind of think of it in that way. Like I'm sure I can't fully predict how like AI is going to affect stuff, but like I feel like it's going to be a thing that's like, it's going to be a productivity booster. It's going to probably evolve like our jobs in certain ways, but like I don't think it's going to fully replace us at the end of the day. It's like there's just too much like handcraftedness for the games that we make, like and just kind of doing the back and forth with design and all these other departments or whatnot. Like that, I feel like is gonna be really hard to replace. Like so it's that part I feel like will still be integral, and you need that collaboration between departments and whatnot. Like it's not this kind of dream thing where like, oh yeah, just like one person will just have that and can do whatever, and it's like it's going to make a certain type of game, and there's going to be a lot of probably junk games that come out of that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those two where like I don't know, like one thing I've gotten into over the last few years during COVID was like just kind of getting more into kind of investments and stocks and stuff, and I've been paying more attention to like the market and stuff, and like you kind of see the ebb and flow of like kind of stuff kind of coming in and out of like people's language for like, I remember when I started looking at that, like the time was like metaverse and the blockchain. And then like you'd have like EA CEOs just like randomly mentioning that during conference calls. And you're just like, okay, we're not using any of that in our day to day, but you're just kind of mentioning it for the stock. So like, I feel like AI has kind of become that buzzword a little bit. And like, it does have some like tangible things it's doing for certain industries, but like, yeah, I think part of it is also that, but there'll definitely be some like productivity benefits, I feel like, in the long run.
Why doesn't anyone just take it upon themselves to figure out an AI algorithm to fix unwrapping and
UV, like
unwrap our trim sheets for us and just like use AI for the stuff that we didn't want to do?
The tedious stuff, like I'm all for them automating that, and then we can really just focus on making art, really, and just
the person that this right now that loves UV unwrapping is like swearing at us right now. So like they're like, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting. It's an interesting time for sure. I agree with you on like most everything. Like, do you also feel that, sort of, cause I don't know. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's personally, I don't know how I feel yet about the whole scraping my work thing, because I sort of, and I'm just being totally honest right now. Like I don't want to offend anybody. So like, I'm just giving you my honest opinion, just how I truly feel about this. And I'm still working through this in my head, but like, I don't know how I feel about AI algorithms scraping my work, because like, I feel like when I'm doing the work, I'm scraping other people's work in reference gathering and, putting mood boards together with other people's work, and like, they're inspiring my brain to like create something. So like I know it's not exactly the same. Like I said, I haven't worked this out in my mind. So, but like, do you have that visceral reaction of like, stop stealing my stuff kind of thing? Like,
I think like maybe a bit less so than most, just because like personally, like most of my, like, I don't know, I don't have as much personal work on my portfolio than some other people. I've leaned a lot on just kind of like my industry work and stuff. And for me, like, I don't personally see my industry work as mine at the end of the day. Like, that's that company's work, and I'm just showing what I worked on, right?
Interesting.
So it's like, for me, it's kind of more on the companies to be fighting back more, because like, I don't know, when I look at like those websites, like, have I been scraped or whatever, like I see all my stuff on it, but like all my stuff is technically copyright stuff from other companies. So they're stealing from that company, not me directly.
That's true.
Like, but we've made our money from the work we've made already. We were paid our salaries and stuff. So it's like, yeah, I can see how for people that like have a lot more personal work, how that is just fully personal, and you're just outright stealing their work, right? And I mean, you see some of the stuff of like, when people are like kind of mid-journeying like art in a certain style of an artist, like that's like super bad. But like, so personally, and that's just my situation where I just don't have as much personal work, so I'm not as like personally attached to that. But like, I sometimes I do see people that are just like, all their work is just like company work, and then they're just upset about it. But I'm just like, that's not your work technically at the end of the day. Like, if you want to get technical about it, it's like, it's the company's. So the company should worry about it much more. And like, that's what I guess it has been a shame that I haven't seen more of, like, that companies are kind of getting more fighting back against it. But like, but that's actually one thing I could see, like, in terms of like ethical AI in terms of like, if a company has their own thing and then they're only just feeding only their artwork in it as like the fuel for it, right, of the generation. Like, I could see how that could be useful for a company where just like, that's helping you at the end of the day, but it's only your artwork and you're not like feeding any other stuff in it, just so it's like you're kind of getting stuff in their style. But
it's a tough one,
how it all plays out.
It's kind of like a problem in progress, right? Where it's like, I don't quite know how I feel about it yet. Like, I don't quite feel right about it. I don't quite feel wrong about it. But like, what you said is true. Like, even my portfolio, like, I have very few personal pieces. It's mostly industry work. And it's like, definitely. I mean, like, that's a good point. Like, I don't have as much skin in the game as other folks. So that's a big part of it. We'll see, man. It's an interesting time. And I kind of feel like we're turning a corner in a lot of ways. Like we're turning the corner in like contraction in the industry. We're turning a corner in like macroeconomics. We're turning a corner in technology. We're turning a corner in how we work together, whether it's remote, whether it's on site, whether it's hybrid. Like there's a lot of things that are changing right now, and it's a crazy time to be a part of the industry. And I hope the best for everybody. Honestly, like I hope things stabilize and
I just hope it just stabilizes, and we can have less of that just sense of dread and fear overall, because definitely not a great feeling. But hopefully we're nearing that corner soon that it'll start shifting.
Well, Jobes, I have other topics here. I can talk to you all day, man. But I want to thank you for taking the time today to join us for our first podcast as part of the SkillTree umbrella. And hopefully we do this again. And there's many other topics here we can get into, and there's some that we talked about today, which I'm sure we'll get some comments, and we can probably look at those comments in the future and sort of dissect and dive into those. But thanks again, Jobes, and enjoy the rest of your day, and really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. See you, man. Take care.